Story 1. I'm sure most of you use Instagram these days. Whether you have a big following or none at all, it's just something most people use. Apparently, the app has over 1 billion active users, which still blows my mind. At the time this happened, I had about 300 followers. I live in a rural town, so that felt like a fair number for around here. We don't know a lot of people outside our districts. One night while watching a movie, my phone buzzed. A girl named Holly had started following me on Instagram. I opened the app to check her profile. She was this really gorgeous blonde with around 5,000 followers. About 50 pictures, posted in a way that looked normal, spaced out over time. When I get followers like that, I usually do a quick scan to make sure they're legit. Her posts had around 600 likes each, and lots of comments from guys sending hearts and drooling emojis. As I scrolled through, before I even followed her back, she DM'd me. "Hey, I don't do this a lot, but I thought you were really cute," she wrote. Not to sound like a douche, but I'm pretty fit and people say I'm attractive. Girls DM me a lot too. I followed her back and messaged the same. Conversation flowed easily. Fitness, what high schools we went to, small talk that felt natural. She gave me her number, and we set up a meet for the next night, a Friday, at a local bar called Lucky's for a couple of drinks. Friday rolled around, and the nerves kicked in. I'd never gone on a date from an Instagram DM before, but she was stunning. I drove to Lucky's and sat in my car in the parking lot, waiting for a call or text to say she was there. Eventually she texted, but not to say she'd arrived. Her car had broken down and she needed a ride. I rated a few times to be sure. I tried calling, but she didn't pick up. She texted her location instead. I didn't answer right away. I took another look at her Instagram. It seemed real. Friends tagged her. People commented. I wasn't convinced it was a catfish. I texted back while heading out and drove down the quiet side roads toward the location she'd sent. It was a weird place for a breakdown. There were woods on either side of the road, and a car pulled off to the side next to the trees. The car's hood was up, so I assumed it was hers. I tried calling again, but the call wouldn't go through. I realized I had no bars. I parked across the road and walked over. The vehicle was a black Nissan Altima, and the windows were completely tinted so I couldn't see inside at all. I tapped lightly on the window and waited. No one opened the door, so I walked to the front to see if anyone had been messing with the engine. From where I stood, it didn't look like anyone had tried to fix anything. I was getting impatient. I texted, "Where are you? I'm about to leave." When I walked back to the side, I noticed the driver's window was cracked down. It had definitely been fully shut a minute ago. I called, "Holly?" thinking someone had to be inside. As I leaned closer to peer in, a fist reached out from the cracked window, and a finger motioned me to come closer. It was a man's hand. My stomach dropped. I stammered, "Get lost," and ran back to my car. I sped off and took the first right I could. Because I kept glancing in the rear view, I saw a car with its lights off following me. I tried to shake it by turning my lights off and making as many turns as possible. Eventually, I lost the tail and made it home. When I checked Instagram later, the profile had already blocked me. At a later date, I found out the profile was real, but had been hijacked by some creepy guy. I wasn't the only target of whatever plan he had. I don't know what would have happened if I'd gotten out further or stayed longer. All I know is how lucky I felt to have left when I did. If anything, this whole thing taught me to trust my gut and double check, and to be careful with strangers online, no matter how real their pictures look. Story 2. I run an Instagram account with about 1,100 followers. It was public, so anyone could view my photos, like them, and leave comments. Frequently, I'd get strangers liking or commenting on posts, but one man stood out above the rest. I remember the first time he commented on one of my pictures. It was a beach shot with a friend, so I was in a swimsuit. The post had around 11 comments, and one came from someone I didn't recognize. His comment was simply 3 flame emojis. Curious, I tapped his profile. He had 3 photos, 80 followers, and he followed more than 200 people, me included. All 3 photos were selfies of him, which seemed odd since he looked like he might be in his 40s or 50s. I shrugged it off. Those kinds of things happen sometimes. After that, though, he began commenting on nearly every new photo I uploaded. One short comment read hot. That felt a little creepier than the flames. 2 days after my next upload, he didn't comment at all. He messaged me directly instead. His DM read, "Hey, I just wanted to tell you that you're beautiful, even though I'm like 30 years older than you, LOL. I answered LOL thanks, which I'm surprised I typed. Most people would probably ignore a message like that. He replied, "I would kill to meet a girl like you." About 10 minutes later, I sent another thanks, hoping that would end it. He came back with, "Maybe one day I'll meet you, ... LOL. I left that one unread. Everything about him unsettled me. Still, I didn't block him. Why lose a free follower and likes? I hadn't heard from him again until I posted a new photo. This time, it was a picture of my sister Carol and me in front of our house. He commented almost immediately, "You and your sister are so cute." That crossed a line, so I deleted the comment and blocked him. Later that day, Carol and I were home alone. I was in the bathroom painting my nails, getting ready to head out, when through the window I noticed a car pull up one I didn't recognize. Only the front of the vehicle was visible. Bushes along the side hid the rest. The headlight went off and no one stepped out. I noted it since we live on a dead-end street and rarely see strangers cruising by. I closed the blinds because I felt exposed. My sister was on her laptop in her room, and when it was time for me to leave, I didn't say goodbye. We usually text when we're leaving anyway. I walked to my car while keeping an eye on the mysterious vehicle, which, when I could see more of it, appeared to be a Maxima. The tint on the windows and the night made it impossible to see anyone inside. I got in, performed a 3-point turn, and drove down the one-way side street toward the main road. I was headed to a small social gathering at a friend's house. Not really a party, but there was drinking. I cut myself off early, knowing I had to drive home, though I'll admit, this isn't advice. I was pretty tipsy while driving. It was only 5 minutes, though. When I pulled up to my house, the Maxima was still parked out front. I needed to know whose it was. I creeped by slowly again, but still couldn't see in. I parked, texted a few friends to say I'd arrived safe, and stepped out to walk up to the door. I kept staring at that car all the way to the front door, and when I dropped my keys, I was oddly afraid to bend over and retrieve them. I rang the doorbell about 5 times so my sister would answer quickly. No one came, so I had to get down on my knees and search for the keys. They were right there on the doormat. I opened the door quickly, took one last look at the Maxima, and shut the door behind me. It was past midnight, but my sister usually stayed up late, so I quietly, a bit dizzy, went upstairs and down the hall to her room. The door was wide open, and the lights were off. Maybe she'd gone out. I tiptoed in and froze when I heard a faint sound that took my brain a moment to place. It was my sister whispering from the closet. The closet was slightly ajar, and I could see her eyes peeking through the crack. She was shaking and crying. I knelt beside the closet and opened it fully, whispering, "What's going on?" She didn't speak. She pressed a finger to her lips to tell me to be quiet. I grabbed her arm and pulled her out, and I silently closed the closet. When the closet shut, there in the middle of my sister's room stood a person, as real as day. I couldn't tell if he faced us. It didn't matter. Both of us screamed as we ran. I felt heavy footsteps right behind us. We sprinted for the car. I locked the doors just in time as his hands fumbled the handle. When he found the doors secured, he rammed the window with his shoulder while my sister screamed and sobbed. Through the chaos, I realized who he was, the same man who'd been messaging and commenting on my Instagram. I performed a 3-point turn in the driveway while pounding the horn to draw neighbors' attention. I think noise helped because he jumped in his car, which was the Maxima, and sped off, making a 3-point turn as well. At first, we thought he might pull up to the house, but instead, he raced past and disappeared down another street. We turned and went back inside. We phoned our parents, then called the police. Officers discovered he'd entered through an upstairs window after climbing a ladder, boosting himself onto the awning, and getting up to the sill. I told them about his Instagram stalking and how he must have found our address from my most recent photo. With my sister, the shot had the house number visible. I tried to give police the man's Instagram handle, but when I checked my blocked accounts, it was empty. He'd already deleted the account. So even if Instagram can trace deleted users, I didn't have his username memorized, and nothing more could be done. I knew it was unlikely they'd catch him. Since then, I locked my Instagram to private and only accept follows from people I know. I'm much more cautious now and far less likely to post revealing photos. I felt rattled for weeks afterward, as if my private life had been barged into and rearranged. My sleep was restless, and every unfamiliar sound made me sit upright and listen. I stopped going out alone after dark and asked friends to stay over more often than before. My sister and I became hyper-aware of small things, locking deadbolts twice, leaving a light on in the living room, texting each other when we walked to the car. I deleted any photos that revealed details of our home, and I began checking my social feeds with a new kind of suspicion. I changed my privacy settings across platforms and unfollowed accounts that felt even slightly off. The police offered what comfort they could, took notes, and ran through the limited options available when a digital account vanishes into thin air. They reminded me to preserve any evidence of messages and to write down specific times and descriptions. Friends encouraging me to install extra security cameras and to consider changing locks, which I eventually did. I found myself staring at my phone before posting anything, trimming captions and cropping images to remove house numbers or distinct landmarks. Therapy helped me process the helplessness I felt, the violation of someone using a public profile to find and target us. Talking with a counselor made the fear feel less like a permanent shadow and more like something I could manage. Over time, the acute panic faded, though a low-level vigilance remained. I still enjoy sharing moments sometimes, but I'm selective now, only faces I recognize, places that won't reveal private details. My relationship with social media shifted. It became less about attention and more about connection with people I know and trust. My sister and I started a routine of nightly check-ins when one of us was out late. We also learned to trust our instincts. If something online felt unsettling, we acted right away rather than hoping it would blow over. I wish I had taken more precautions sooner, but the experience taught me quick, valuable lessons about boundaries and safety. Now, when I scroll through feeds, I'm kinder to myself about what I share, and I teach younger friends how to keep their profiles safer. Although I regret the invasion of privacy, it forced changes that made me and my sister more cautious and ultimately safer. I now sleep with a nightlight and feel safer. Story 3. I found something recently that's been utterly freaking me out. Before I explain the discovery, I should give a short backstory that makes what I found even more unsettling. Over the last few weeks, on multiple nights, whether I was trying to fall asleep in my bed or sitting in my room with the light on, I kept hearing a single faint but clearly audible tap against my window. I hesitate to call it a tap because the noises never sounded like someone intentionally knocking. It was more like something lightly scraping or pressing against the glass for a brief moment. At first, I assumed insects were hitting the window, but when the same noise recurred 2 or 3 times a week, I started to get unnerved. I told my dad, and he brushed it off, saying it was probably just bugs as I had thought. Then there were a few quiet nights. After that, I got a text from someone. Not really a friend, just a guy I'd had a class with who somehow convinced me to give him my number. His message read, and at the end, he included a link. I tapped it, and it opened an Instagram profile. The account name matched my initials. That wasn't the first thing that caught my eye. The profile picture was a photo of me. Scrolling through, I saw 45 images on the account. Every one of them showed me. They weren't selfies or photos I had taken. They were candid shots photos I never knew anyone had captured. Some were of me at the beach, others of me in my car. The newer pictures, however, were far more disturbing. A few were taken in my backyard, and the worst were the most recent uploads. They were photos of me in my bedroom, taken from outside my window. There were shots of me sitting on my bed doing homework or texting, shots of me standing, and one even showed me in my underwear. I felt sick to my stomach. I wanted to scream and vomit at the same time. Every photo had at least a couple of likes. Some pictures had comments, and none of them called out how creepy this was. Instead, the comments egged them on, with lines like, the photo captions were just as chilling. They read things like my mouth twitched as a tear slid down my cheek. I was so unsettled, I could barely put my feelings into words. Then I heard it again. That sound at the window. The scrape. The brief touch. Everything clicked into place. When I connected the dots, I completely lost it. I screamed louder than I ever had. My dad rushed in, arms open, attempting to comfort me and asking what was wrong. I showed him the Instagram page and tried to tell him about the noises at the window. Saying explained would be generous. I was a wreck and could hardly speak. My dad's face shifted from calm to horrified to outright furious. He ran outside yelling, making a scene that drew the neighbors' attention as he searched for whoever was stalking us. Afterward, he came back in and called the police. I gave the police the Instagram handle and asked them to trace it immediately. Law enforcement filed the request with Instagram. By the time their inquiry reached the platform, the account had been removed. That didn't end things, because Instagram recovered the data. The activity was linked to an old iPod Touch. Sadly, the device couldn't be traced. It appeared either destroyed or set to never use Wi-Fi again. Seeing how shaken I was, my dad decided we would move out within a month. Thankfully, there haven't been any more noises. I now keep every blind closed all the time and check carefully to make sure no one follows me when I drive. The only advice I could think to give others is, make your Instagram private and stay aware of your surroundings. Also consider reporting any suspicious contacts to platform support and local authorities. Change passwords regularly. Check privacy settings. And tell close friends or neighbors so someone else knows what's going on. Small precautions can make a big difference. Today,